Good day, everyone, from wherever you're watching across the world. I welcome you to Seeking the Truth channel. I'm Simon Oladapo, your host. We've been discussing the role of God in the emergence of leaders in the society. And I have asserted that by giving man brain, God has already played his own role. Whatever needs to be done in the emergence of leaders is left to man to make his choices and take his decisions. In one of our previous episodes on this topic, a friend dropped a question. He said, if I say that God plays no role in the emergence of leaders, what happens to Romans chapter 13, verses 1 and 2? And that's what I want to address now. And this may take some episodes because we have to break it down, since it is the truth that we seek. Let me say this up front. Romans chapter 13 is one of the most misunderstood and misinterpreted texts of the Bible. Let me repeat that. Romans 13 is not controversial. It is only misunderstood. It's one of the most misunderstood and misinterpreted texts of the Bible. In Romans chapter 13 verse 1, it says, honor all authorities. It's because there is no authority except that which is instituted by God. Now, to understand that scripture very well, we have to go to the original text from which that text was interpreted. The New Testament, as we know, was written in the original text, Greek. Now, the word authority in Greek is exousia. Exousia. It is a legitimately delegated power, right, or freedom to act within a jurisdiction. Let me repeat that. Exousia, the word translated authority, is the legitimately delegated power, right, and freedom to act within a given jurisdiction. Now, take care of those words because they will still matter as we continue this discussion. Legitimate and delegation. Now, before we continue, let me say this. There are many authorities acting in many jurisdictions that are completely at variance with the nature of God, with the command of God, and with the instruction of God. Let me give an example. You have the courts. The courts also have authority. They have people that they legitimately delegated power to act within their jurisdiction, to exercise authority. Are we going to say that God also instituted those authorities? Definitely no. There are witchcrafts. There are different societies that are anti-God, and they also have their own authorities. They have those that they have legitimately delegated power to act within their jurisdiction, and they exercise these authorities. Are we then going to say that these ones too, their authority instituted by God? Of course, no. If we go to Ephesians chapter 6, Paul said we should put on the whole armor of God that we may be able to stand. That our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and spiritual authorities in heavenly places. Now the question is, the principalities, the powers, the spiritual authorities in heavenly places that Paul talks about in Ephesians chapter 6, are we going to say that God also instituted those ones? Of course, no. Now, this is the understanding of that scripture. Like I said, Romans chapter 13 is one of the most misunderstood and misinterpreted texts in the Bible. Now, if you read that Bible, it says, for there is no authority, there is no exousia. The next word after authority, that is the key that unlocks the meaning to that scripture. It says, except that which is instituted or ordained by God. Now in English language, we know that unless has a simile. Unless, except, and unless are similes. Where you use except, you can freely use unless in most cases. Now in this context of this Romans chapter 13 verse 1, if you remove except and put unless, the reason or the interpretation for that scripture jumps at you.
So you now have honor authority, for there is no authority unless that which is instituted by God. For there is no authority unless it is instituted by God. There is no authority except. So the key to understanding that scripture is that word that follows authority. Except. Once you don't pay attention to that word except, we have thrown up the meaning of that scripture. So when it says there is no authority except or unless, it simply means any authority that falls short of God's standard, any authority that God did not institute, so to say, doesn't even qualify as authority. Because as I've just said before, you have cults in witchcraft. There are many societies that are anti-God, who also have their own authority. We cannot say God instituted those authorities. Now, the words I say we should take cognizance of at the beginning. It says legitimately delegated. In the courts, power to exercise authority are also legitimately delegated. Their requirements may be that before someone will acquire that, will get to that position to exercise authority, there probably may be a number of people who will have killed. There may be some quantity of blood they will have shed. There may be some lives. There may be some kind of destruction they must have executed before the power to exercise authority will be delegated to them. Now, it may be wrong, but it still follows that the power was delegated to them and they exercise authority. Definitely, they are not instituted by God. So, the first place we start today is that we should take cognizance of that word except. We should pay attention to that word unless, because except and unless they are similar. If an authority is not instituted by God, it is not recognized as authority. Now, how do we know authority that is instituted by God? We'll start from there in our next discussion. Please do not forget, like, share, subscribe, drop your comments, let's engage. A great day lies ahead of you and a wonderful weekend. Take good care of yourself and family. I'll see you this week. Bye.